This video is going to look at biological rhythms. There are 3 different types of biological rhythms that you need to know, and we're going to go through each of them in quite a bit of detail. So a biological rhythm then is a change in behaviour or body processes in response to some sort of cyclic change in the environment. The 3 that you need to know are ultradian rhythms, circadian rhythms and infradian rhythms. And while you may not be familiar with those particular terms, the actual rhythms we're going to look at you will be familiar with. So ultradian rhythms, first of all, this is a rhythm in which one cycle lasts less than 24 hours, and the example we're going to look at is the sleep cycle, so the stages of sleep. So this diagram here is showing approximately 8 hours of sleep, and it shows the cycle that you go through when you are asleep, drifting from awake into a light sleep, a very deep sleep, and then you go through a section of REM sleep. So NREM, so that's when you're not in REM sleep, that's most of the night, which is about 75%. And you start off in a very, very light sleep, and as you drop into sleep, your breathing and heart rate become very regular and your body temperature starts to drop. When you're at the very bottom of that graph, so in a very deep sleep, that's when your muscles are very relaxed, you have increased blood supply to tissues, and things like growth and repair occurs, which is why sleep is so very important, and hormones like growth hormone is released at this point. So REM sleep, these are the brown bars that you can see dotted throughout the night. It's only about 25% of your sleep, and this is the point at which you're dreaming. So during this point, your brain is very active, but your body is paralysed in order to stop you from physically acting out the dreams that you're having. So as you can see, each one of those sleep cycles lasts maybe an hour and a half, something like that, and you'll go through several of them throughout the night. So that's a good example of an ultradian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is any rhythm which lasts about 24 hours, and the whole of the sleep-wake cycle is the best example for humans. So if we have a look here, this is shows you the sleep-wake cycle, which goes round from noon and back to noon again, and it shows you the points at which you are likely to be most alert, least alert, when things like melatonin secretion starts, which we'll look at in a bit more detail. So this sleep-wake cycle is controlled by 2 things: endogenous pacemakers and exogenous zeitgebers. Endogenous pacemakers are internal functions within the body, and exogenous zeitgebers are external stimuli that promote either sleepiness or wakefulness. So endogenous pacemakers then are internal rhythm keepers, and the chief endogenous pacemaker in humans is the SCN, or the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is located near the optic nerve within the brain, as you can see on that diagram, and that takes in information about light levels and passes that information to the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland is responsible for secreting melatonin, and melatonin is the hormone which induces sleep at night. Now that obviously works in conjunction with exogenous zeitgebers, which is information and cues from the external environment. So sunlight is a big one. The moon and the seasons also play a role in our sleep-wake cycle. Now, there has been research that's already been carried out into biological rhythms. So this researcher, Michael Siff, he carried out his own experiments by spending, I think it was about a month in a cave, in which he phoned out to his colleagues when he was asleep and when he was awake. So what he was essentially doing was removing all the exogenous zeitgebers from his sleep-wake cycle, so they were controlled entirely by the SCN. And what he found was that his body did actually shift into a sleep-wake cycle of approximately 24 hours. Infradian rhythms are the 3rd type of rhythm that you need to know, and this is a rhythm which completes a whole cycle in more than 24 hours. And a really good example for humans is the menstrual cycle. So here's a diagram of the menstrual cycle. Here you can see the days of the month along the bottom, averaging about 28 days, obviously different for different women, but you can see how the levels of hormones increase and decrease across the course of the month in response to ovulation and the endometrial cycle. So Go and have a look at the pre-reading if you'd like a bit more information about any of these rhythms, but make sure before you come to the lesson you can explain the difference between ultradian, circadian and infradian rhythms. You can give an example of each of the types of rhythms. You can explain what is meant by an endogenous pacemaker, and you can explain how the SCN is involved in the sleep-wake cycle, and also you can explain what's meant by an exogenous Zeitgeber.